What's up guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about something a little controversial and I think really interesting. It's from an interview from the Fat Doctor, Dr. Asha Lamy, who was on TV recently this week, and it's really split opinions and it's quite controversial, but she actually does have some valid points and some points that I don't agree with. So I'm going to play the interview, I want to get your thoughts in the comments and then we'll break it down.
I mean, I'm fat because I drink too much red wine and I don't exercise enough.
That's not true. That's absolutely not true.
How do you know my red wine consumption?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. But you are not fit. You're not fat because of what you eat and how much exercise you do. That is the line that everybody is led to believe. But there is
Doctor, if I left you now and ran up and down Leicester Square for 3 hours and then went home and had a piece of lettuce and then came in and did the same tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, I would start to look like a supermodel.
Only for a few months, and then you would stop. In fact, you would start regaining weight within the first year, even if you only ate lettuce and ran around Leicester Square for 3 hours. That is a fact. That's not fiction. That is an absolute fact. Even if you took that skinny jab that's out on the market now, you'd still end up gaining weight.
I think it's called Ozempic, isn't it?
Ozempic. You would end up gaining the weight. That is how the body works. The body will always return you to your natural set point weight.
You don't mind fat kids going to school in Barking?
Absolutely not. I mind the fact that children
But they're
are not
more likely
getting...
to die. I hate to tell a doctor their job, but they're more likely to die, aren't they?
That's not true. There's absolutely no evidence to
doctor.
show that.
Okay, so there you have it. As you can see, this is gonna split opinions. Before we go any further, I'd love you to leave a comment in the comments below and let me know what your initial thoughts are after seeing that. Please keep it respectful for others. There's no right or wrong answers. I'm just curious. Okay, into my thoughts, agreements, and rebuttals. So the first thing is you are not fat because of the foods and the calories that you consume. Now, I disagree with this because that obviously is the mechanism for gaining body fat or gaining weight, is by consuming more energy than you expend. So doing less activity or eating more food, where that ratio is in a plus, is in a positive if you want. You are having more energy come into your body than what you need and than what you expend. So as a result, you start to store adipose tissue, being fat. Now, I actually think that she was cut short. And her point was, you're not fat because of the foods that you eat, you are fat because your genetic set point, you are always drawn towards that. Now, genetic set point is a theory which has some evidence behind it, that we have a set point that our body likes to stick at in terms of body fat or weight, whichever way you want to look at it. And some of you might have experienced this, that you gain some weight, it's quite hard to move away from this weight that you normally stick at, you have to really kind of excessively eat a little bit more. And if you start to undereat, very quickly you kind of return to that weight. So for me, that's about 82 kilos, and it's certainly there. I can move down from that, but as I start to fall back into life's habits, I will gradually move back towards that. Now, that's not necessarily much of an issue, but I don't think it's as cut clean as that, like it's written in stone. Because your genetic set point, from my perception, is actually much more altered, changed, or influenced is the better word, by your habits and the habituals of your life. So diet is actually Greek, it means way of life. So for example, let's take a carbon copy version of me. We do the exact same amount of activities. We are identical in every way, shape or form. First version of me has a habit of not having breakfast in the morning, just gets a black coffee, has a lunch meal and has a dinner meal. So calories, let's say, are at 2,000. And that's just how my habits of life set me up. The other version of me does the same job, exactly the same. Their habit is to have breakfast, maybe they grab a bacon roll or a McDonald's, something on the other branches or chains are available, and they have maybe 3 meals a day and snacks in between. Their habits mean that they consume more calories in a day. So they might say that their genetic set point is higher, or you could just say the way that they live their life leads them to have slightly more body fat than what is on the first version of me. So the truth is somewhere in between the two of those. And I believe that if you spend a long enough time at a different weight, that may become your new set point. There's a really great study and video that Layne Norton has done on this, actually. It's really worth looking up. And it's about taking things to extremes. So you don't want to yo-yo diet. It's not ideal. And this is the reason for it. Is basically, I'm gonna make it really, really simple, is when you lose a lot of body fat, your fat cells, they shrink in size. Now, fat cells are not inert. They do stuff. They're like organs. They send signals to the brain, and they have a very integral role with leptin, which is a hormone that basically controls our metabolism to a certain extent and kind of our satiety. And what happens is when you lose a lot of fat, those fat cells, they empty those reserves and they shrink in size. But what happens if you yo-yo diet because you've dieted via unsustainable means? You kind of have supercompensation where your weight goes up, but you actually create more fat cells as well. And the problem is if your genetic set point is governed by the size of these fat cells, let's say they were this size, we lost body fat, they shrunk down to this size. Now we go back up weight, or maybe more than we were before, and we take these fat cells back to the same size, but now we've created more of them as well. We now have more fat cells all wanting to be that set point size. Do you see what I mean? So now you have more fat cells and they are all having a role in the body with producing leptin, may have interactions with your estrogen levels as well. So this is why we really want to stay away from yo-yo dieting. And the last point I want to make on genetic set points, you will know someone on both ends of the spectrum who has looked a certain way for most of their life. Maybe they've been heavier, had more fat, or maybe they've been someone who's a lot skinnier. You haven't seen them for X amount of time, you re-bump into them and their body composition is completely flipped. Maybe they've had things go on in their life or whatever and they've gained a lot of weight, and you've had someone that's lost a lot of weight, and you may have known them now for multiple years and they have stuck at this new weight for a long period of time. Now, the theory was that you would gravitate back to your genetic set point, but maybe not, or clearly not in this case. And I think that we all know someone who has done that. So it also shows that a point that I'm going to make in a minute is that the method in which we achieve our fat loss is probably the most important factor here. The next point was about regaining fat back. And I think this is what she was going to allude to before she was cut off at the start with, oh, you're not fat because of the food you eat, you're fat because your body naturally regains weight. Now, it is true, dietary adherence / long-term results from studies is not good. There is a lot of studies, I would probably say the majority of studies that I've seen show long-term that people's weight has gone back up to a certain amount, maybe more than it was before, but it's certainly not stayed at the goal weight or the weight they got down to during the diet. Now, that's a problem. But what I don't want is people to be disheartened by this, because you have to understand lots of little quirks here. First off, what was the method in which these people would diet? For example, the study that I was looking at this morning, these people were put on 1,000 calories. Well, that's not sustainable. There's no wonder that someone who's been on a study, paid, maybe they've been paid to do it, hopefully they've been paid to do it, dropped down to 1,000 calories to get to a goal weight, has had a rebound, because that's not sustainable and it's not a smart way or a safe way to be losing fat long term. And if you look at studies like the Minnesota starvation diet, lots of people had lots of problems, and the amount of people that came across it with disordered eating by the end of the study was huge, whether it was obsessive thinking about food, all this kind of stuff. So we know that extremes do not work and are not sustainable here. The second point is, what was the actual method of that diet? Was it something that you enjoy? Let's say you're someone who loves eating carbs, but you were put on a low carb diet. Now that's not going to be sustainable for you for long term. And unfortunately, in most studies, you aren't going to be the person that gets to pick which diet you're on or those type of things, because the scientists have to have some randomized element to this, or they have agendas that they need to fix. So I have worked with lots of people in my time, and I have helped lots of people lose a lot of weight. I have had people that I have not helped lose weight for whatever reason as well. So you have to understand that, take this with a pinch of salt. I don't want people to look at that one point and see that studies have shown that people's fat loss long term is not that great and take that as gospel, because it is done in a very black and white fashion a lot of the time, without empathy, without coaching, without an intelligent way to diet someone, because they have goals to meet. A diet needs to be flexible and adjusted to a person and their goals. Often you can't do that in a study because adjusting that diet for that person voids the results or the whole method of their study. And the last point that was touched on is that if you are overweight, you have a higher correlation to comorbidities and basically you are more likely to die younger. I think most of us will agree with that to a certain extent, but also you have to understand that there are unhealthy people of all different size shapes. I mean, it's a generalization. You could have someone who has a body fat like me and has lots of issues, whether they're predisposed to genetic conditions, whether they've caught something in life via bug, parasite, transmitted disease, whatever it may be. Your weight is not the only thing that is going to influence your longevity in life. So you have to allow for that a little bit. But I think as a general rule of thumb, most of us agree that if you start getting to a certain size or you have bad habits or not as healthy habits for a long period of time, your risks of diabetes, of heart attacks and atherosclerosis, which is plaque in the arteries, is all going to increase. And I think the problem here is you can really use data to bolster either side of the argument. Anyone who's been involved with keyboard warriors before or has been the person being the keyboard warrior, you will know whatever your fixed point of view is, you can find a study to suit that. If you want to say that low carb is best, you can find multiple studies to suit that. If you want to say high fat is best, you will find multiple studies to suit that. And often, the answer is somewhere in the middle on it depends. And I think that's the answer with this whole kind of interview here. You have two people that are polar opposites, which makes great TV, but it doesn't necessarily give you a level-headed conclusion to this. And I think it's important to take this with a little bit of pinch of salt, take some of the things that the fat doctor says, which are valid points, and take some of the things that the interviewer said, which are also valid points, and kind of start to unpack them and say, well, how does that apply to me? Sure, studies don't show good long-term fat loss, but those people were on 1,000 calories a day and they were doing a diet they didn't like and they didn't have any coaching or really teaching on why to eat certain foods or why to do this or why to do that. All they did was given a food plan or told to eat X, Y, or Z. That's not a sustainable way to diet. It's not education, which is the most important thing from my perspective. A lot of the time when I get people to track calories, is just for education. I just want them to see what the foods they look like and get an idea for how many calories come from these habits of foods that they have. And they don't have to do it forever. I look at it as a scaffolding to kind of help someone get a framework, and then you can take it away afterwards. It's just like bowling to start with, when you've got the kind of rails up, just to help you get closer to hitting those pins, and then you can take them away as you become more confident. I know tracking calories is not for everyone, but I like to use it for most people who are willing to and feel that it's okay for them to do so, for at least for a short period of time. Anyway, that is all I have to say on the matter. I would love to hear your comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like this video, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys.